Hello, this is Michael Smith, and I chose this week to talk to you since we're discussing memory history, to talk to you about the Charleston Library Society, which is an organization that I'm actually a member of, and I'm really proud of the fact that they have been around for a long time. The society was founded in 1748. It is the third oldest such institution in the United States. There are some benefits to living around many older cities like Charleston that I've enjoyed, and this is particularly one of them. But as I said, it was the third oldest. The first one would have been Benjamin Franklin's founding of the library in Philadelphia in 1731, and then the Redwood Library and Athenaeum in, I think, Rhode Island, 1747, preceded it. But in days when books were at a premium, wealthy patrons would join together and pay subscriptions, and they would buy the prevailing books and periodicals and magazines. And so it was a way for people to be able to access materials locally that were probably too expensive for them to buy personally. The Charleston Library Society has become the center of Charleston's intellectual and cultural fabric, and there's all kinds of events there. Not only are they the repository of some of the oldest records in the nation, old newspapers, they have scholarly research, they have programs, literature, history, world affairs, music, all those things. And as a patron, I get to attend those for little or nothing. So it's really quite a great thing to be a part of. This is by far the oldest institution in South Carolina. Where I grew up in Greenville, South Carolina, that the county library there has a South Carolina room that functions much the same way in that it holds many primary documents especially from the British era, from the Cherokee Nation, which is there. So there are several of these around, and so I wanted to bring that to your attention as a possibility. I'm not sure what you might find around you. You might be really surprised at what you have available to you. Among the documents in the Charleston Library Society is one in particular I wanted to mention, and it was the Fundamental Constitution of Carolina that was written by John Locke. John Locke, as you may not know, was the secretary of Lord Ashley, who was one of the Lord Proprietors that Carolina was given to by Charles II when he was returned to the throne, of course, after his father, Charles I, was beheaded. And the Puritan era, then they returned Charles II to the throne. And there were 8 of these noblemen that had helped Charles II while he was in exile with money and with bringing him back to the throne. And so he gave them the land of Carolina, which encompassed Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina today, all the way up through the Cape Fear Basin. And so John Locke was Lord Ashley's secretary, and he actually wrote the first constitution for South Carolina. There are also letters there from George Washington, from John Marshall, from Alexander Hamilton. You have early American and colonial newspapers. There are rare manuscripts and maps and nautical charts, and a lot of very rare manuscripts there that have been written by various people. One of the things that the society is working on and has been doing is to digitize much of that and to make it available to a wider spectrum of researchers or whatever that can't come necessarily and spend time here at the society in Charleston. But they are doing that. It takes a special scanner to do that. The other thing that the society does that's interesting is that they have a bindery and a conservation section in which they are rebinding ancient old text, and they are doing things to conserve them, to keep them from disappearing. One of the major problems with anything of this nature is fire, of course, and so this happened with the Charleston Society, and about that in about 1778, they had over 5,000 volumes collected, and you can imagine that year what those volumes would have been. They were mostly completely destroyed by fire. By 1808, they had 4,500 volumes again. By 1826, they had 12,000 volumes, and today they've grown and they've survived 2 wars, which is interesting. When we look at wars overseas, and we realize the cultural destruction that happened in places like Afghanistan and Iraq, and things that can never be replaced that are so precious, we understand that the Charleston Society had the same issue during the the British occupation of Charleston and the Revolutionary War, with them wanting to destroy places of cultural interest. And of course, during the Civil War, Sherman's troops and others tried to destroy the cultural foundations that the South had collected and held on to. And so they distributed these things out to various homes and tried to keep them safe. But they struggled through both of those wars and managed to maintain many of their records without having them destroyed. So I thought it would be something that you might think about in your research, is to look around to see what kind of local libraries or societies such as these subscription libraries, that you might like to visit to see if they have primary documents that you can use in your research. I have found the Charleston Society to be a great repository of the things that I need. I have been writing lately on South Carolina history, a paper on the rice production. Now I'm working on one, of course, on the Revolution in South Carolina, and so I'm excited to see how that will turn out. And of course, this visit to Charleston impacts that greatly, since many of the primary records were there. Thank you so much for listening, and I wish you great success in your future.